And for our young people between the ages of 15 and 24, it is the second leading cause of death. And a new statistic that just came out shows that the increase in the rate of suicide in the US since 1999 is 35%. The rate of suicide has increased 35%. Let's do something. The book, The Day Before I Died, its main focus was suicide, but much of the positive feedback we have gotten related to other subjects, and we'll talk about those as well too in future episodes of this series. The book was written as a personal and intimate story of hope, hopefully to provide the inspiration and strength for others to find their way out of the dark places and the dark times in their lives. Hopefully to provide inspiration and maybe solutions where people can go on to live a happy and productive life. It is important that you participate in this series. Ask your questions, make your comments, and let us know your solutions as well. We can learn together. Today's topic is connect versus isolation and silence. I don't know how you feel about that, but no matter what's going on in your life, no matter where you are, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not alone. What happened to me as soon as I entered this deafening silence of shelter at home, quarantine, don't go out, whatever you want to call it, for COVID-19, I was immediately transported back to the 1970s. And the same isolation, the same fears, the same concerns were surfaced as a result of it. Now, no, there was no virus back in the 1970s. This was the fear and the isolation and the silence based on my return from Vietnam. And it was based on the fears of PTSD. I suffered from PTSD when I came home. I was afraid I could not handle what was around the curves of life. I was afraid I could not handle what came next. I was afraid you'd find out about my secrets, my personal secrets, and my wartime secrets. And the fears today are manifesting themselves similarly. They're fears of self-doubt. I can't handle this. I'm not going to make it. I'm not strong enough. And this is very concerning. Let's talk. My special guest today is Toni Cole. I smile when I say her name because she's fabulous and she makes me smile all the time. Toni is a published author, an LCSW, working on her doctorate degree, which she'll have soon in behavioral health. She's the owner of Behavioral Health Solutions 365. And in addition to doing one-on-one counseling, she does classes on behavior modification, and with her education and experience, she does life coaching. I first met Toni right after the death of my daughter. And as you can imagine, that was a very, very difficult time for me. I was overwhelmed by grief. It was at the time I was writing the book. And so I got lost. I got completely lost in the grief and off track on the book. I sat with Toni. She helped me find peace with the death of my daughter, and she helped me get back on track with my book. It was published last year. I want to say welcome, Toni. Tell us a little more about yourself. Say a few words. Jump in here.
Okay. Well, first, I would like to thank you, Joe, for having me on as a guest. And I'm so proud of you. You know, I've been telling you that forever. Just being a published author and just having a dream and seeing it to fruition was a major accomplishment. And you guys, when Joe gave me a copy of his book, a signed copy of his book, I cried. You know, just having that physical manifestation in my hand was like truly remarkable because I know the history, you know, I know the things that he had to kind of break through, the barriers he had to get over in order to complete the book. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, please get yourself a copy. I was lucky enough to read the drafts of his book. So, and it's, you know, in its developmental stages. So yeah, it's a remarkable story. as Joe mentioned, I am the owner of Behavioral Health Solutions 365, and we have a focus of behavioral modification. And under that umbrella, we do a lot of different things. Today, I'm here to just kind of partner with Joe and answer any questions you guys may have, and just to have a discussion about connecting versus isolating, and just some tools and strategies we can come up with to kind of make sure that, at least everyone who's listening today will walk away with some skills that they can have during this difficult time of COVID-19.
All right, Tony, let's get started. Let's talk about that. Connect as an intervention tool. I talked about the fears of self-doubt that echo in my head. That mantra that says, I can't handle this, I'm not going to make it, I'm not strong enough. My brain seems to be reacting to this situation and telling me I'm weak. I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but Tony, how can we intervene and reduce these fears?
One of the things that, a fear is a feeling, and it may be based on a reality, it may not be based in reality. But one of the things that help, and I would say especially during this time, is talking to someone else and just kind of running those fears past people just to see if they're valid or not. And then also doing a self-assessment, like what I'm afraid of. Is it something that's happening now? Is it something that I'm projecting that's going to happen? Is it something that already, took place in the past? And just kind of having a chronologic, like being able to put it in a space of when, like what's going on now. If what you're fearful of hasn't happened yet, then we can say that that's not necessarily a valid fear because you're projecting that it may happen. So that's one thing, to kind of do your own self-assessment, and then to talk with someone else. And if you suffer with anxiety, because some people, those methods may work. Oh, well, this is not happening now. Let me get present and let me do some mindfulness and that sort of thing. If those methods don't work, then seek professional help. And I know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of mental health professionals are offering their services via Zoom and Facebook and that sort of thing. So you still have a lot of supportive services available in the healthcare field. We call it telemental health, telehealth. And these are things that were taking place before this pandemic. And it's a good thing that it did happen, that it was tested prior to the pandemic, because now you get to see just how vital it is to have that connectivity to your healthcare providers when you cannot physically get to where they are.
Okay. And to support what Tony said, there's a disaster distress hotline it's a federal hotline, federal crisis line for disasters like this. And it's run by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association. And they have received an 891% increase in calls as a result of it. Don't be shy. If you need help, reach out. Tony, let's try something different. When we were talking before, you said social distancing doesn't mean isolation, but I'm locked in my house alone. It sure feels like isolation. What did you mean, and what do you suggest we do?
And that's going back to the feeling, it may feel that way, but we're not isolated. As you know, in the 12-step community, a lot of the meetings, the 12-step meetings are now online. They're on Zoom. You have your conference calls, places where you can call in to get the help that you need. Like I just mentioned, you have the telemental health and the healthcare, world, where you can connect to your doctors, whether it's your medical doctor or your behavioral health provider. Friends are, even family members are like Zooming, You have like families getting together, Zoom, and just so they can see each other. So and I've heard some people say, hey, I've been, connecting more during this pandemic than I've done like all year long. So there are so many different opportunities to connect with people, so you won't be alone. I would say, even if you feel that you are, if you have a phone number, if call someone. Call someone, and not just call them, but ask them to call you from time to time just to check on you and be transparent about the struggles you're having. Hey, I feel alone. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I feel like screaming. And I heard someone say, well, I did scream. So whatever you have to do, whatever you have to do to kind of get through this difficult time, it's okay. But you're not alone.
Okay. Tony, for me, it's easy to lose my emotional balance. When I lose my normal structure and programs that I'm involved in, I get a little goosey. And yes, that's a technical term. How can we maintain mental and emotional balance during these tough times?
Well, I think like for people who have pre-existing diagnosis of mood disorders, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, bipolar disorder, even people who may have psychosis, you talking about schizophrenics and that people who have those type of psychiatric diagnoses. For people who have those pre-existing conditions, I think it's imperative that you continue with your treatment interventions. This is not the time to discontinue your medication. This is not the time to stop doing the things that work for you. For people who don't have that and they need emotional balance, there are so many apps available um, on that you can download that will help with like mindfulness and getting centered, breathing techniques. There's this one that I really like called the Daily Calm. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but it's amazing. I actually use that in one of my classes, and it just kind of takes us through, breathing exercises and mindfulness. And if you have any spiritual practices, like this is the time to kind of redouble those efforts. If you're questioning, where is God? What is God? Like this is a great time to explore that, explore what God means to you or whatever spirituality you may be interested in. So those are just a couple of ways to help with the emotional balance. Also, hobbies. Sometimes it's just like the practical things that go over our head. Again, if you have mental health issues and you have a provider, talk to the provider because they know better what works for you. But I'm just giving some general ideas, things that you can do. Because even if you have a provider, it's a team effort. The doctor or the mental health therapist is not the authority over your mental health. You are. And they're just there to assist you with the goals that you set for yourself. So it's important to do the things that are that fills you, that give you a sense of balance. And for some people, I know they've started participating in hobbies, like they haven't like maybe they like art and they got away with it, got away from it, I should say, because just being so busy, caught up in life. And this has been kind of like a reboot for them. And they've been able to kind of get back to the things that they really enjoy. I heard somebody mentioning gardening earlier. There are so many hobbies that people can participate in that can help them with their emotional balance. Listening to music, dancing, it's just like, and these are things that you can do alone. You don't need to have, anyone there with you. And if you have any pets, we know that pets are very therapeutic, hence therapeutic animals, because I have two of them here. And it's like, as soon as I started, they started playing and they was like really loud. I'm like, wow, y'all haven't done that in about a month. As soon as I get on, as soon as I get on the web, this series, here they go. But yeah, my pets have really been a light during all of this.
Thank you, Toni. All right, let's pause for a second and see if we have any questions, comments, or concerns from the audience. And I turn to our production manager, Oliver. Do we have any questions?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so far we don't have any questions, but please feel free to drop those into the chat box, into the chat box on the right. And then I'll make a note of those and we can go over those at the end of the show.
All right, one of the questions that I was asked on my email was, what do I do if I know somebody who's suffering? I know somebody is down, depressed, out because of personal problems. What can I do to intervene or to assist them in finding a way out of that darkness, Toni?
Yeah, mental health is a very serious condition for those of us who suffer with it, or live with it, I should say. And there's no single answer. It depends on a lot of factors. Like, does that person already have a diagnosis that you're aware of? What is the diagnosis? Do they have a support team that maybe can break through where you can't? But I think one of the things that's disheartening for a lot of family members and loved ones of persons who have mental health issues is that you just not knowing, the bewilderment, not knowing, like your friend question, like, what do I do? How can I help? And as with any intervention, the person has to be willing to participate. We cannot force them into care unless we see that they are a danger to themselves and a danger to others. In those two instances, they can be hospitalized against their will. And so there are hotline numbers, and I don't have it right off, but I'll get that information for you, Joe, where they have like mobile crisis teams who will come out to the homes and do an assessment and see if that person needs to be hospitalized.
And we can post that on the website too, Toni, as well.
Okay.
Let me give you my non-clinical answer, and you can comment on that. For me, when I reached the point of considering suicide, two things happened. My world became very, very small. It was like looking at my world through a telescope. And when your world gets that small, your first thought is, there's not much to lose. So why not? And the second thing that happened was I felt alone. I felt completely disconnected. I felt completely unloved. And the thought there is, it just doesn't matter. Nobody will care. So my thought was, let people know you care. Just the idea that you care will make a huge difference. And you can care through a small gift. You can care through a card or anything like that. And as far as the small, small world that you have, show them that the world is bigger. Show them that they have family, that they have friends, maybe a photo, maybe a family reunion, something that you can show them that the world really isn't that small. Because again, it was the mind playing tricks on me. That was not true for me. My world was not small. My world was very, very large. And people did care about me. I just didn't know it. I needed somebody to remind me of that. Toni?
Yeah, and that's definitely one approach. But I would say, a lot of times when a person gets to the point where they're ready to take their own lives, they absolutely need a medical intervention. They need to be somewhere that's safe, where they don't have access to any means to take their lives. And so that primarily means like a hospitalization, and then medications to help them stabilize. And then you can go into other interventions to help them on a day-to-day basis. But by the time they become suicidal, that's a crisis. They are in a crisis and they need a high level of intervention at that point.
Okay, yeah, and I was talking about intervening before they needed medical intervention, but
Yeah.
just when they're starting to get down and depressed.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
in advance of that, but either way,
It
those
is
are
a progression. You're right, Joe. It is a progression, and I always say it's better to use. How did I put it? Yeah, it's better to preventative care is better than having to get to the point where you need an intervention. I mean, just like with the COVID-19, if we, stay in place and do the social distancing, that's prevention versus not doing these things, getting COVID and needing an intervention and then getting in the hospital and wondering if they're going to have a ventilator and wondering, like, I don't want to get caught up in that world. So I'd rather take the preventative measures now. And it's the same thing with behavioral health. It doesn't, you don't just wake up one day suicidal.
good,
It's a
good,
progression. And it's best to, when you first notice, and let me just talk a little bit about some of the symptoms or the warning signs, if you will, to look at,
great.
to look for when it comes to depression. If you notice that maybe you're sleeping more or you're not sleeping at all, you're starting to deal with insomnia, your appetite, your diet, are you binging? Are you under eating? That's another one. And then just a loss of interest in normal activities. Now, you could easily say, well, of course I have a loss of interest in normal activities. I'm sheltered in place. Well, not necessarily. Are you sheltered in place in bed all day? Or are you sheltered in place getting up, taking a shower, preparing your meals, taking the dogs for a walk? Like there's a lot of things that still need your attention. And so what are your daily activities? What do they look like? Have you noticed a drastic change from the way you used to operate till now you're just kind of shutting down? Those are the warning signs to look for. And of course, anger, agitation, arguing with people a lot. And people don't normally think of anger and agitation as a depressive symptom because they think, oh, somebody's somewhere crying and weeping. That's not me. No, it's not you, but you punched a hole in the wall. Like, what's going on there? Something's going on. So if you notice those signs, that's when to start asking for help. And that's when to be transparent with someone that you feel safe enough to tell those things to. Because again, we want to prevent getting to the end of that spectrum where you're suicidal and now you need a medical intervention for, voluntarily or against your will.
All right.
Hey,
Oliver, any questions?
yeah. Hey, Joe. So we have another one. So this one is actually specifically for you, and it's how did you come out of isolation after the Vietnam War? And then as a follow-up, what lessons did you learn about isolation from that experience?
Oh, wow. Great question. For me, part of my isolation and part of the prison that I created was I used alcohol. And so alcohol felt like it was keeping me together, felt like it was keeping me strong, but of course that was just a lie. And so a major, major part of my recovery and stepping out of that isolation was stepping into a 12-step program where I connected with others, where I knew I was cared for, I knew others cared about me, and I could talk about those secrets that were that I kept hidden for that decade, the decade of the 70s. So the biggest lesson for me after I got out and looked back on that was it was not true. It was not true. Yes, there were unfortunate and difficult circumstances surrounding our return from Vietnam. There were difficult and terrible things that we witnessed during Vietnam, but my world was not small, as I said. I had a big world. And people cared about me. People did not know I was suffering and that I was feeling isolated and lonely and considering suicide. And it was not anybody's fault but mine because I didn't reach out. And as we talk about connect, there's two sides of that. We, as a population of concerned people, need to reach out and connect to those who are suffering, and those who are suffering need to reach out and connect as well. Call, ask for help. Do not sit there in that distress. Like I said, there's plenty of people to help you. There's plenty of people that care. You're not alone. Toni, what do you think?
Yeah, you can't, we can't stress it enough because this is a time where people who didn't have coping skills, and that's what we're talking about, developing some coping skills to deal with life as it is. And for people who didn't have these coping skills before the shelter in place order, it's more than likely they won't develop them over, at this point. So they are going to need a lot of help. And then you think about, people who are dealing with domestic violence and then all of the mental distress that goes with that. But I did find the numbers for the psychiatric emergency response team for San Diego County. And it's short, the short term for it is called PERT, P-E-R-T. And in order to get someone to come out and assess a loved one, a family member, or even yourself, you would just have to call 911 and specifically ask for a PERT team to come out because there's a psychiatric crisis. And then there is also the suicide prevention hotline number that a lot of people, especially veterans, I believe the Department of Defense came up with this 1-800 number, and it's just kind of taken hold, and people all over the country are using this number. It's a 24/7 hotline. It's 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-TALK. And I just have one other resource for San Diego. It's called It's Up to Us. And that's another 24/7 hotline for people who are in emotional distress. That number is 1-888-724-7240. Kind of easy to remember, 1-800-724-7240.
And for any people that are not located in San Diego, and I can see there's some, if you need some resources, reach out to us on the website and we'll find you those resources. Oliver, anything else?
Yeah, so I have another one. So this person messaged and said that they find that they do a lot better with structure and routine in their life, and that in isolation, it's pretty likely that they can, develop new routines. So what would you two suggest to structure their days? Any strategies?
You want to take the lead here, Toni?
Yeah, it depends on, a couple of things that needs to be done. Let's just look at the framework. You need to take a shower. You need to take a shower. You need to, have breakfast. You need to prepare meals, eat your meals. If you work from home, putting on, sometimes just kind of putting on some clothes and, it makes you feel better, instead of kind of lounging in your pajamas all day just because you can, but just kind of putting on some clothes, even if you're working from home. And when you have a lunch break, maybe go for a walk or something, or just go stand out. If you're somewhere safe and, you can adhere to the social distancing, just to get sunshine and fresh air, that's helpful. Anything that you need to catch up on, like whether it's bills, whether it's budgeting, I would just say write a list of to do. Maybe you have a to-do list that you can kind of go from on a day-to-day basis, and that'll help you. I have one friend who have sort of like an accountability partner, and every day they talk and they say, well, today I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E. and at the end of the day, they check in and be like, oh, you know, I was able to do most of it, or I did all of it. So that's been helpful.
I think my technique is like that accountability partner. I'm a fan of to-do lists, so I make to-do lists every day. I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And when I get those done, it makes me feel a little better. I like getting them done. And believe me, I've got a lot of to-dos. I'm right in the middle of a move before they shut everything down on us here. So there's plenty to do. And so make a to-do list and get up, get dressed, and act as if you're working, going to do that to-do list and do whatever else you have to do. But create the structure to your day. Make it happen. It's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah.
I promised I wouldn't have this go on too long. Were there any more?
There's one specifically for you. This one is, how many years sober are you? And is maintaining your 12-step practice difficult in isolation / just shelter at home?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't want to answer the second half of that one. First half, of course, I'm very, very proud that I have 43 years of sobriety. And I celebrated 43 years on March 27th in isolation.
Oh.
And I am having difficulty with the alternative 12-step meetings, and that is those on Zoom. I don't get to see people personally. I don't get to hug them. I don't get to talk to them one-on-one as much as I'd like to. It has been much more difficult for me, but it is working and it is helping me stay on a sane and appropriate path. So at least I think it's sane. Others of you may not, but I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Can I just add that it's, you know, really important to have somebody to talk to about, because this is a new normal. And even though you can find structure in your day and, you know, you can, you know, do your mindfulness and your Zen and all of that, a lot of people in the world are dying, you know, and this pandemic, there are so many things we don't know about it. So it's okay if you're a little off balance and you're trying to find your way. And even though we're trying to go on as normal, this is not normal. This is not normal. And we can call it the new normal, whatever we need to do to make peace with it. But this is a trying time. This is a very trying time. And just have some compassion for yourself. Allow yourself to teeter, allow yourself to fall sometimes, but reach out and get the help that you need. And sometimes, especially in 12-step programs, you know, there's the focus on we focus on the solution. Like, what's the solution? What's the solution? And it'll have people feeling like, oh, you know, I'm not going to talk about the problem because we're talking about the solution. Talk about the problem. Talk about the problem, and get some help with the solution as well. Because this is nobody has ever experienced this before. So if anybody's acting like, oh, I got this pandemic thing down pat, okay.
I was going to say that's one of the negatives of having long-term sobriety is to say, oh, I shouldn't be having this problem. I shouldn't be calling people. I shouldn't be bothering people. 100% wrong. Pick up the phone, call somebody. It's that mind playing tricks on us again, you know. Yeah. And I did. The other night I got depressed and lonely and I picked up the phone. So, and it solved the problem. I want you to know it solved the problem and we're doing better today.
And I just want to do a little self-disclosure. I have 26 years sober, and I am dealing with depression during this time. And, you know, the talking to friends and the Zoom, I even Zoomed some meetings on the East Coast where I'm from, Washington, D.C. I went to my old home group, you know, saw familiar faces, and I was at the meeting like this, you know, like so not into it. and today I realized you need to contact your psychologist. You need to contact a therapist. And that's what I was saying. If normal means, if practical means aren't working for you, take it up a notch. Take it up a notch, and it's okay.
All right, well, let's wrap this up, Toni. If there are unanswered questions or unresponded to comments, Oliver, please capture them. We'll do that on the website or email or text, whatever is appropriate.
Maybe we
But I
have
see.
one more. There's one more. It's a really good one. I don't want to leave them on the hook.
All right.
Are we okay with? Okay. So it's how can we help our friends who are not only staying at home but are by themselves? Are there any tips that we can use to keep their spirits up?
Toni?
I think just calling them, connecting to them, letting them know that you're there, doing regular check-ins. It's worth a lot, just knowing that people care.
And I
And
would,
I,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry, Toni.
And I was just going to say, if they don't respond, then, that's a cause for concern. But as long as they are engaged, that's always a good sign.
Yeah, and you'll know they're engaged. What I was going to suggest is on your walks, keep your social distance, but you can leave a little care package at the door, a little item of food, and with your name on it and number. And if they call back, then and say thank you, then you know you're engaged. They're engaged, and that's important.
Yeah, you could bake them with, like, if somebody was to bake me a cake and leave it at my door, I would eat it.
I'll be sure to say thank you too. So, all right, let's wrap this up. I see some people on this video that know me very, very well, and they're all probably in a little bit of shock and awe. Yes, I've become quite adept at the internet, social media, phone apps, YouTube. You see, there is a silver lining to all clouds. Of course, I had help, but we won't go there. There are positive outcomes. So I sent you an email or Facebook invite to go to the website, click on the banner, join us for this series. And on that website, you'll find more about the book, more about the topics that we can discuss in this series. And of course, you can ask us to for any topics that's of interest to you. Also on the website, it shows you where you can buy the book. Please purchase the book. Purchasing the book will help support the work we're doing here. And I hope you will participate and change how we deal with these issues, most importantly, suicide. My long-term goal when we can get out of isolation is to engage audiences through speaking engagements at bookstores, universities, military installations, and any other venue that might benefit. If you have a lead, please respond on the website with your referral. Remember what Toni said, social distancing is not isolation. Don't allow yourself to believe it's isolation or create isolation. For me, I have to recognize that I'm not my thoughts. It's my brain reacting and saying I'm weak, when in fact I am not. I am strong beyond measure. I am loved, and I'll walk out the other side of this stronger, more confident, and wiser. Thank you for participating, and join us again in 2 weeks for the next session in this video series. We will do this program every other Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next session's topic will be grief. Thank you very, very much.